Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming along to week 2 of our Dementia Knowledge Network series of sessions that are really just short sort of kitchen table chats about different topics around dementia. Brett, I think we've got some feedback from your end, if you wouldn't mind just muting. If you're there. And so first up, Sarah and I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. And today's topic is services outside of the standard service pathway. So we've sort of entitled the session Thinking Outside the Box, and we'll continue with a Q&A type format. Where I will ask Sarah some questions and we'll run through, and then if you have any questions for us at the end, that would be great. So depending on where you enter the service system and which organisations you are linked with, you may or may not get information about other services and resources that might be useful to you. So Sarah, I see different dementia training and advertisements on Facebook and in my email. What other types of services are around?
So, Elizabeth, there are a whole range of services and supports that are not funded directly by some of the things we've talked about in past sessions. So they're not funded directly by NDIS, CHSP or home care package programs. And this means that sometimes the information is not funded to you by your funded organisation contact, only because they may not know about it. But I can provide you with some great examples.
Okay, great. So where do I start looking and how do I know what's out there?
Elizabeth, this is a really difficult one because a lot of these services are not interconnected, and a lot of the time there is no clear referral pathway into these services. It really depends on who you know or what information you've been given at the time. Hopefully, the Dementia Knowledge Network and other industry networks are working to break down some of these artificial barriers and make some of the information available freely to all. So some of the services that you might find useful that aren't connected to the ones we've talked about already, one of them is the umbrella dementia cafes. The cafes are teams of local volunteers working together under one supportive umbrella, facilitating greater connections between people living with dementia, their families and the community. The Dementia Umbrella Cafes are actually funded independently through a philanthropic trust and are spreading out to other more regional areas of Melbourne at the moment. They believe that the key to personal wellbeing for somebody with dementia is social connectedness. It's about having a community support network around you, understanding, accepting and including you. It's no different for people experiencing dementia. There are links and there are telephone numbers, and I'll actually drop a document into the chat afterwards that everybody can share with all the contact details. The second one I wanted to talk about is on the top right of our slide there, My Dementia Companion. So the My Dementia Companion tool makes caring and life easier for people impacted by dementia. It intuitively offers you or carers a personalised and practical support information through the maze, what they call the maze of information and the evolving journey. It's totally free for all carers to use, and you can access it on your phone or on your computer. For professionals and providers, it also brings many benefits for you and your clients. My Dementia Companion, I have a very pleasant conflict of interest because I've been involved working with Nan on his product, and so has Julie actually, proofreading and adding to some of the specific information that's provided. It's a wonderful tool and free for all carers to use, and Nan at the moment is working on a professional version for professional workers. The next thing that's listed on the screen is the Dementia Alliance International. So Dementia Alliance International is a registered non-profit organisation whose membership is exclusively for people with a medically confirmed diagnosis of any type of dementia from anywhere in the world. So it's very different to the services that we've been talking about, where it's carers and professionals who are accessing the services to assist people living with dementia. This service is for people living with dementia themselves and is actually not open to people who don't have a diagnosis. Dementia Alliance International seeks to represent, support and educate others living with the disease and the wider community. So they do an awful lot of advocacy work. They're an organisation that strives to provide a unified voice of strength, advocacy and support for our rights, our individual autonomy and improved quality of life. So Dementia Alliance International does a lot of advocacy on the global stage around the human rights of people living with dementia, and believe very strongly that when people are diagnosed, they should be given options of rehabilitation, of support in their both recreational and working life if people are still involved, and the chance to support each other in their dementia diagnosis. They provide many online support groups and other activities for members free of charge in a number of different time zones. And again, the information for Dementia Alliance International, I'll drop into the chat in a sec when I stop sharing my screen. The other thing that people might find useful, and again, sometimes is funded and sometimes isn't, is carer support groups. There are many different carer support groups running across the state and the country, with options of online meetings as well as in-person meetings where restrictions allow. One good place to have a look is on the Carer Gateway online forums, where you can join an online carer support group, or it's actually a forum of question and answers there. Carers Australia also has a support group directory. So if a carer support group has listed themselves with Carers Vic or Carers Australia, they'll be listed on the carer support group site there. And I'll drop the links again in this document I'm going to give you. Some carer support groups, though, are not listed and may only be accessible locally or attached to a certain type of service. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the Dementia Knowledge Network, which is co-hosted by Elizabeth and myself. Regular monthly meetings, which invite a guest speaker, someone who's working to make a real difference in the lives of people living with dementia. And we welcome everyone to join that conversation. So people who are working in the industry, people with dementia, carers of people with dementia, or anyone with an interest in better outcomes for people living with dementia. And the last thing I wanted to add was contacting your local council. They may know of things that are running locally. And if you live in a regional area, it's worth contacting your regional Dementia Australia office, because again, there are often small, unfunded or privately funded through separate organisations, services that run very locally and so are not advertised to the wider community. That was all I could think of when we did our rundown, Elizabeth. That's what I came up with.
No, that's great. I think that's a really good list of services that you may or may not hear about if you are going through the standard sort of typical service pathway, journey that people would step through. So I was just wondering, Sarah, with carer support groups, what sort of information are you likely to hear about there that you wouldn't get from a mainstream service provider?
Often the way that carer support groups are set up are very much carers sharing with each other about how they're coping with individual stresses and events that happen in their lives. Carer support groups are often set up with some group rules that include a safe space where anything can be said and no judgment is ever passed on any of the members. And carers find it easier, I think, to talk to other people in the same circumstances about some of how they're feeling about what's going on, about the changes in the person that they're caring for, and about some things that might be difficult to talk to family or professionals about.
Yeah, thank you. And I think I might just add something there with the carer support group, I guess, forum, in both Sarah and I having facilitated this type of support group for people living with dementia or carers of the person living with dementia. And I think it's interesting that sometimes a facilitator is helpful and sometimes they're not. So because we may or may not have lived experience ourselves, I think it's really important for the group, whoever attends the group regularly, to have some ownership over, the style of meeting and the information that's shared, or whether the meeting is about venting and trying to, blow off some steam in terms of stress or frustrations that you're experiencing, either yourself as the person with a diagnosis or the carer of a person. But again, as well, I would, reaffirm that I have seen some amazing information sharing and strategies and ideas bouncing around the group of people who attend carers meetings, and it's a really valuable source of information sharing. So yeah, I think that's a great one.
Yes, it is. It most definitely is. And yeah, they're all run very separately depending on the needs of the people who are attending, like you said.
Great. And I also, one question popped into my head about the umbrella dementia cafes. Do you know, Sarah, what types of activities or what type of structure those cafes have when they typically run each fortnight?
So I know that they do quite a bit of intergenerational work. So they link with local schools, and I think it's primary schools, but I'm not entirely sure, in the area. They have some sort of morning tea, social get-together. It's facilitated by both a facilitator and volunteers. And then from what I know, and Elizabeth, I haven't actually been to one. So I know that they split up, and then the carers can have a chat about whatever carer issues are going on. And the volunteers and the younger kids stay with the people living with dementia, who do an activity of some sort together while the carers are chatting in another space.
Great. And I know from some conversations that I have had, and probably yourself as well, have had with Kirsty Porter, who is the founder and director of the Umbrella Dementia Cafes social enterprise. I know she's really passionate about getting kids involved, as you said, in any aspect. And I've heard of a number of different programs where students are being recruited through primary schools, or there's some dementia-specific education happening in primary schools. And I think it's just an important point to mention that I think because we are taking a bit more of a macro view now of dementia and trying to improve the quality of life for people living with dementia, improve the community awareness and the integration of people living with dementia, or continuation of their involvement in mainstream community. It's really encouraging to hear about young kids being educated and taught about just normalising dementia as a condition. So That's exciting. Great. Does anyone have any questions for Sarah or I on any of that or anything else?
I do, Elizabeth, if that's all right.
Sure.
How would we know that the services are reputable or the sources of information are accurate if we find them on, something like a platform like social media?
Yeah, look, I think that's a really good question. And that's where My Dementia Companion is a really useful tool. And Sarah, are you happy for me to sort of throw to you, because you have a bit more involvement than I do, about how My Dementia Companion sources information or ensures that it is reputable and appropriate? Thanks.
Yes, of course. And like Elizabeth said, Brett, that's a great question. Because My Dementia Companion is free and is incredibly comprehensive, if they find any resource that's useful and applicable and someone in Australia is eligible, it will be listed on My Dementia Companion. But unlike a traditional directory, all the links are scraped every 2 weeks to make sure that they are still live, that they are still relevant, and that they are still representing the most recent information available. So something you might see on social media about, I don't know, a group who are advocating for people with dementia and providing training, if they weren't listed on My Dementia Companion, if someone hadn't looked at them and worked out that they were a registered organisation or a reputable not-for-profit with reputable information, it would not be listed on My Dementia Companion. I guess the other thing you can do too is contact them and say, who are you and where are you getting your information from?
Yep. Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
I have one. You were mentioning about the involvement of children, which I can see from the relationship between our grandchildren and my husband. It's amazing. But our grandchildren, other than the two oldest one, I don't think are yet really aware that there's a change. But how is there a book or information about how to tell, or the right terminology to tell children? Because we've got our grandchildren. The oldest is 12. Well, the youngest is only not even 2 yet. But so really from 12 to and then down to 6 years of age. So is there any literature out there that?
Yes, yeah, Julie, pardon me, there is.
Yeah.
I know of 2 books, and I cannot think of the names of them specifically. One of them's just been released, pardon me, and it's something to do with eggs and bacon. And the other one is much older, and it's a picture book format. But I can certainly find those for you. And
yes,
Elizabeth,
please.
did
That
you
would be
know of
wonderful.
anything else specific?
Yeah, look, I know there is one. It's actually through the Umbrella Dementia Cafes that I heard about it. And I think it's called The Weeds in My Garden or something like that. And it's on their website, the Umbrella Dementia Cafe website.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, I think the author is linked in with the social enterprise there. And it's a really good one. I ordered the book and I've read it to my kids. And I think it's just a really beautiful, simple way of talking through grandparents and children engaging together in a garden setting, so a very reality-based sort of scenario. You know, how things can still be beautiful even though they might change or they might look different or feel different, or yeah, that's a really lovely book. And I know Dementia Australia has a lot of really valuable language guideline information on their website, which can be helpful depending on the age of the children and you know, I guess that the language skills that they have, because you don't want to overcomplicate things.
No. Age appropriate.
Yeah. So there definitely is information out there. And if that is of interest, Sarah and I would be really, sorry, I'm talking for you, Sarah. I would be really happy, and I'm sure Sarah would, for us to source a guest presenter from somewhere appropriate, or an author of one of these books, or somebody who can speak at one of our networks. That was talk about their research and, you know, what they've found in regards to that, because that's a really good point. Yeah,
that would be wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, and is it okay for when you do have that particular guest speaker? Would it be okay for me to bring, say, my include my daughter or my daughter-in-law in on it, because they're the ones that would more than likely want to do the information with the children.
Yes, most definitely.
Yes.
Thank you. That would be amazing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And on that, you've just prompted me to think of some of the family education and information sessions that Dementia Australia run as well. So I know there is a focus on that sort of relationship-centred care, because it's not just the person with the diagnosis and even the person and their spouse. It's a whole family network, neighbours, close friends, you know, people around them, and trying to maintain obviously those connections and relationships and community involvement. So that's a really good topic, and I think Sarah and I have both made a note of that to dig a bit deeper. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. Does anyone else have any questions or comments on the topic today? No? Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for coming along. I think that's it. Sarah, did you have anything else to add?
No, I didn't. Not to that.
Okay. And tomorrow morning, our topic will be talking about self-care and dementia. So that's our next theme for this week. And hopefully some of you can make it along again tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Just trying to stop the recording before we